Hello, everybody. This is the first inaugural podcast for the It Works For Me by Justin Kelly. This show was designed, it kind of came out of the thought process that I was wanting to write a book. I was wanting to write some things down and share with other folks out there that might be either down, sad, depressed, not feeling in a great headspace. And so I started writing kind of the things down that I do on a regular basis, whether it's like just automatic off the top of my head or it's something that happens like subconsciously. And I started writing those things down and I decided this could be a podcast. I missed podcasting. If you're a listener here that used to listen to the Juice in the Morning show, this is going to be a little bit different. This is going to be a lot more of a kind of inspirational, motivational type podcast. We're going to talk to a lot of very interesting, exciting people. We're still going to have fun, just like the Juice in the Morning podcast, but this is definitely its own separate thing. And it's kind of pushed towards, the people like me. You're going to be, 840 almost soon. And, you might be looking for some answers to, being sad, being down, being anxious, being in a negative headspace. And hopefully these things that, I share with you and some of the guests that are on that they share with you might be able to help. And I don't want it to be pigeonholed or just a niche for, white men that are married with kids. I think some of these tips and things like that could also apply to you, whether you're a woman, whether you're younger, older, whatever. I think these tips can work regardless. And if they don't specifically work for you, maybe just listen to the next episode and you'll hear something that will. But with me today, we have Colin Taylor. Colin and I met, I think 5 or 6 years ago on the Juice in the Morning podcast. The Juice in the Morning podcast, we tried to interview people from all walks of life, and we got to talk to him about his college football playing days, his arena football playing days, fitness, and all of those things, because those of you that follow any of my social media or follow any of my podcasts know that I've always kind of been into weight training and things like that. And he's a trainer currently of current and future athletes, also in the creative space with a podcast and an ebook on building a home gym. So I just wanted to welcome you and say thank you to Colin for taking this time to come in and talk to me about things that may work for you.
Justin, man, thanks so much for having me, dude. Like you said, I think 6 years ago, maybe we did that first podcast and have been buddies since then. And dude, I've been watching your journey and your ascension to like the human being that you are now. And I don't know if it means much for you, but like I'm really proud of what you've been able to do, man. Like I'm always watching your Snap stories. I'm always watching your stuff on social media. I'm trying to comment and help as much as I can, not unsolicited, hopefully more solicited
I definitely appreciate it.
But dude, I'm just so proud of what you've done, man. And it's, you've done a really hard thing, but something that I know like would help a lot of people. So I love that you're coming on here and sharing your story. And again, dude, the Juice in the Morning podcast was so fun when we got to do that. So I'm excited to come, with kind of part 2 of that and see how, we have both grown, individually and as family men and as fathers since the last time we talked.
For sure. And like, that's one of the craziest things is when you and I first talked, I think my wife and I were still in the process of going through IVF, trying to figure out how we were going to have a child. It was very difficult. It was a 3-year process. And, at the time though, the Juice in the Morning podcast was just having fun, drinks and talking to people. And, I didn't really feel like I had a whole lot of responsibilities outside of the podcast work and hanging out with my friends. And now it's just completely different. Finished my bachelor's and master's degree in the last year and a half. And then also, I have 2 daughters of my own now. I have one that's 4 and one that's 2, and they keep us busy. And I missed podcasting. And I think being able to talk to you first is pretty great because you just had a child yourself, right? How's that going?
It's amazing, man. Yeah, even you saying it, like, gets me choked up a little bit. Yeah, August Rowe is her name. She was born November 16th of 2024. So at the time of this podcast, she's about 8 weeks old, and she's just been, the best thing to ever happen to me, to ever happen to my wife, the best thing to happen to our relationship. I mean, it's just, it's the thing that ultimately gets you away from like all of your, kind of like selfish self-gratification type lifestyle. Like you're always living for yourself. And even when my wife and I are together, it's Friday night, what do you want to do? Let's go to the bar and let's hang out and let's have some drinks and let's go to bed late. And, now it's like every single thing revolves around her in the best possible way.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's as the hardest thing you could ever do. I mean, it's the hardest training program I've ever ran. It's the hardest, like conditioning that I've ever been a part of. It's that times 1,000. But like when you see that little girl look at you and smile, and laugh, dude, it just like your heart explodes out of your chest. And it's funny because when we first talked, I would have never thought I would have been the person to say that.
Oh yeah.
Like I
And
was,
I agree with you, dude, because the first time, I'm not a big like emotional guy, like I'm not a crier. And when my first daughter was born, like I broke down and I started like I just was crying and I could hear you getting choked up just talking
yeah,
about it. So it's
man,
still fresh with you. But yeah, like as soon as I saw her and like kind of held her, it was like that it's almost like just instantly your brain clicks and it's like, all right, this is all that matters now forever. Like this is like the most important thing to me. So I love hearing you say that because I feel like we had a pretty similar experience in that aspect. And again, like you've said, being difficult, it is one of the most difficult but most rewarding things that I've ever been a part of. So like I said, I can't say enough about that. And also, I look forward to hearing your stories and things that you take on throughout the process of being a dad.
for sure. And I'll say one more thing, man, for people who are like considering it or people who are in the process. I said it on social media a couple weeks ago, but it was something your wife or your partner is pregnant for a significant amount of time, and you meet people and talk to people about it, and everybody wants to give you advice, and everybody says, the things that they experienced, good or bad, again, solicited or unsolicited. And the thing that really stuck out to me that nobody talked about was like the bond that was created between my wife and I as soon as this
Hmm.
human being arrived. Like I obviously love her more than anybody ever on the planet, right? But like when she was able to literally like turn into a superhuman and have this child right in front of us, my love for her became so much deeper. You know what I mean? So much like took it to just the next level that it was I didn't think it was going to be amazing for our relationship because nobody had mentioned that. But like the moment that happened, looked at this woman and really thought like, she is the most incredible person that I've ever met for being able to go through this and what it's done for our relationship has just been amazing. And 2 a.m. you have no sleep. She says something, I say something, we get on each other's nerves. It's like that stuff happens. But
Yeah.
ultimately, like the baby lays down in bed and we're still sitting with each other and I now love her more than I've ever loved her. So I think that's if you're considering it, if you're out there and you're considering it, man, I think it's an amazing thing to do, an amazing path to take.
Yeah, and it's what's nuts to me is how it changed kind of even my perspective on work, school. I know this sounds
Yes.
silly, but just like training in the gym, like it's just like the things that are important became more important and the things that aren't that important, like, I'm not that stressed to be like, okay, well, we're not going to go to the bar to watch the Notre Dame game or whatever happened. Like we're hanging out with our kids and we look forward to planning stuff together. And I like that you brought up the whole bringing you and your wife closer together because I don't think I ever really articulated it that way. And it's awesome that you said that because I think people listening to this might actually, that have kids, might actually think about that and, talk to somebody that may be in the process or whatever, like realizing that did happen because now
Yeah.
that you say that, I think that was a very big thing for us. And one question that I have to ask because you mentioned being up at 2 a.m. like kid sleeps does your child sleep okay? Are you guys getting up a lot? Like, are you losing a lot of sleep? Because the reason I'm asking is my wife and I were lucky with both of our daughters. Very quickly, they were sleeping fully through the night because we had really big daughters. I think one was like 10 pounds and the other one was like 9, 8 or something like that. And I just know that the doctor said like they'll probably sleep through the night if they feed well and all that kind of stuff. So we had pretty decent sleep from the beginning.
Amazing. Yeah. So we our daughter had it took her a little longer to get back to birth weight. So kind of early on
Hmm.
we were told to wake her up
Yep.
and every couple
And
of hours
give,
and make sure
yep.
she feeds. And so
Hmm.
now we are in we're kind of figuring out the routine, but you know how it is. As soon as you figure out the routine, it changes the next day, right? And she
Changes.
wants nothing to do with that routine.
Hmm.
So we're pretty consistently now. Kind of the first stretch is going to be anywhere between like 4.5, 5 hours, which is great.
Okay.
And then from
Yeah.
there, the next two are anywhere between like 2.5 or 3.5 hours.
Hmm.
So I understand it will get better, but as kind of frustrating, if that's even the word to use, right? Because my sleep on my priority list is so low now,
Hmm.
right? That it's like, okay, as long as she's good, like she's number one, number two, number three, number 60, and
Yeah.
then it's like, oh, am I tired? Like deal with it, have
Right.
some caffeine.
Yep.
But so we are getting up pretty often. My wife is doing an incredible job because she's nursing, and that's like an insanely hard thing, and she's doing
They're incredibly
unbelievable with
difficult
that.
thing. Yeah.
Another incredibly difficult thing. And she's doing that, so she is up much more often during the night than I am. We have something worked out. We both get up, and because
Hmm.
I want to be there to support her, but
Of
she also
course. Yeah.
understands that if we're both tired, nobody's going to be helpful. So we're getting some stretches, 4 and 5 hours here and there. But I'm trying to remember this time because I know eventually she'll be sleeping 8 hours through the night, and we're gonna
Hmm.
kind of miss that,
Of
like
course.
getting
Yeah.
up and sharing that time with her. So I'm trying to be as present as we can be in these moments, but we're not quite to a full night of sleep, and that'll be nice when we get there. But right now, man, we're just enjoying every minute of those screams and cries and all that jolts us out of bed. You know what I
Yep.
mean? In the middle of the night.
And that's again, like this podcast already, like anybody listening, like there's already a couple things that I feel like Colin has said that, like, when you're going through that, focus and remember that is going to be gone. So like him getting up with his wife and kind of handling with this is like, that's a bonding moment as well. So that, that's always one of those things that people can, you want to look forward to the time that things aren't difficult, like things get better or easier. But then I think a lot of people don't take, and I've been guilty of this myself, not taking the time to really be aware of like my current situation and enjoying that current situation, even if it is difficult, because when you look back on it, you're going to look back on it fondly. So I think that's already something that's really important. And then we've talked about kids and the things that we're doing. Tell me a little bit more about what you've been doing with like your business and your podcast and all kinds of the stuff that you've been doing since the last time we talked.
Absolutely. Are you having trouble, by the way, hearing me? Are you getting an echo or
No,
anything on your
no,
side?
you're
Okay,
good. Yep.
cool. Because my audio just switched off, but if you're good, I'm good. So
Okay,
yeah, man,
cool.
a lot of things have happened. So last time we talked, I was kind of winding down the end of my professional football career. I think I had maybe another 4 years or so to play.
Hmm.
Ended up moving to Albany from Cleveland. Won a championship out there in
That's so awesome.
2019, which was amazing. Arena Bowl 32. That's where I met my wife. She was a hip hop dancer out there. We moved back kind of post COVID, 2020. And then just 2 years ago, I got the opportunity to open a performance facility. So I was in a role where I was kind of my company is as a sports performance training company. We have our facilities, but we also go into high schools and colleges and become their strength and conditioning providers. So my role was to kind of oversee 10 to 15 different schools where we were performing strength and conditioning for the student athletes. We ended up ultimately opening a new facility, and my boss came to me a couple years ago and said, "Hey, I know you have no business background, no marketing background, no advertising background. All you've done is training. Can you run this gym? Can you open and run a successful gym?" Right? And I said, "Well, you know, might as well give it a shot." So we opened almost 2 years ago. So summer will be 2 years, and it's been the first time in my professional career that I've actually had a very steady place that I've gone to consistently, as opposed to kind of jumping around between the few schools. So we opened up a facility very early on. We had a lot of pretty immediate success as far as getting athletes in, getting some high level athletes in, some well known people from around the area, working with professional athletes pretty early on, and now it continued to grow where we see. I think on our roster we've got 70 something middle school, high school athletes. We've got about 30 adult members who we train. And work with 4 or 5 club teams. And we're out located on the east side of Cleveland. And we're actually in I believe we're only one of 2 facilities in the entire nation where there's a sports performance facility attached to a sports medicine institute. So
Oh, wow, that's great.
we have return to play. We have the Browns doctors right upstairs on the second floor. So athletes will, unfortunately, when it happens, they get injured. They go through a rehab process. They then get cleared from rehab. They come to us to kind of return to competition training. And then once they get passed and cleared to return to competition, then they either stay with us for their training or go back to their high school or college. And so that's been the big thing professionally that's happened over the last couple of years.
It's huge, man. That's awesome.
It's been, dude,
Congrats on that.
an amazing process. Because again, I know nothing about it. I knew nothing about it when I got into it. I'm learning stuff every day, and we hired one guy as basically like a part-time intern. So for the first 90 days, I was there 7 days a week, anywhere between like 10, 12 hours a day. And then this guy was coming 2 or 3 hours a day, and he's been amazing. We ended up taking him on full-time, salaried position. And since we hired him, the gym really just exploded. And so we've done some great things. And kind of through the process of having our baby and being on maternity leave, like you mentioned, I built a home gym that I took everything from Facebook Marketplace, these other bidding
Mm-hmm.
websites, and I saved almost $4,000 on building this basically dream home gym. So I thought, let me write an ebook on it and see if it can help anybody out. And so that's been cool. Also have some programs and stuff that are online now, and a lot of them kind of focus on athletes. But you mentioned earlier on, right? 38 years old. I have a kid. I'm a dad.
Mm-hmm.
Training is a little different than it was when I was a professional athlete. So now I'm building out a lot of programs for people like us. And what I'm really kind of excited to be able to bring to people is, at 38, 40, 45, we still want to do things and express things athletically, whether you're playing a slow pitch softball with your buddies, or you're playing pickup basketball once or twice a week, or you have
Or
strength
pickleball. That's a big thing now.
like football, right? You're doing all these things, and it's hard because people our age think, oh, I just need to go in, do some compound lifts, be strong, and then they get to flag football and sprint for the first time and pull a hamstring and wonder what the heck why the heck that happened. So a lot of my programming now, what I'm doing online, is kind of based towards what I'm calling like athletic dad, or like always an athlete, where I'm kind of helping people our age keep their athletic ability. If not, maybe be able to jump higher and run a little faster into their 40s. And that's kind of my ultimate goal, is to be able to give athleticism back to the guys who and girls who loved being high school and college athletes and just have kind of lost that over the last few years. And so that's been my big focus, kind of personally, recently, with my online programming.
That's awesome, man. And like, I think just right there, just again, the reason why you're one of the most perfect people to have on this podcast, especially the first one, is a lot of the stuff that you're doing is really, you're trying to help people in the same position as yourself. And that's what made me want to start this. So that's fantastic. And let's dive into the topic that I wrote down. This was what started me thinking about this process, thinking about writing a book, kind of switching that, doing a podcast, because I like to do podcasts, I think, better than I like to write. And it's the what works for me, and something that, this is going to be kind of like a segment, or, agenda item on every podcast. I'm going to share what works for me, and you can kind of tell me what your thoughts are on it, and you can kind of tell me what you think, and then also you can kind of maybe give me some, opposite thoughts, or whatever, really, whatever direction we want to go in. But for example, for me, the very first thing that I wrote down in my notes on my phone was, on Mondays, I begin my week by wearing my favorite outfit. This comes from like a sports background, because one of my football coaches, he was a former wide receiver, and Deion Sanders is one of the greatest athletes to ever play football. And the quote that our wide receiver coach used to give us in high school is, if you look good, you feel good, and if you feel good, you play good. And, it was so funny to think that I had a high school coach that's like, telling us like, hey, wear the socks that you like, wear the armbands that you like get the look that you want. Like, I think back then it was really cool to have like the arm sleeves, like where they were like the just over the forearm, and have them match in your jersey. So it
Yeah.
was, and the kids nowadays call it like drip or swag or whatever they want to call it. But I know I look good when I was playing, and I know for a fact that when I start my week, or if I'm going into a difficult day, or something that I have to like pitch something to somebody, I wear either a shirt or an outfit that I know I look good in, it fits right. And again, this is such a small little thing, but in my brain, having that positive mindset going into the day starts my week in a positive direction, and then I feel like I accomplish more. I feel like I'm more successful, and it just feels good. If it's like, if something negative is coming along, I feel like I can kind of manage it a little bit better, just kind of even just being in my favorite shirt, or my favorite pants, or my favorite outfit. So I just wanted to know what your thoughts are on that, and how do you feel when it comes to like kind of what you wear and that kind of thing.
Dude, I think that's perfect. It's funny you said that. You had that coach, that former wide receiver, who said that. I had a friend of mine's father, and I remember this so vividly. And I'm sure if I would say it to him now, he'd be like, "What do you mean?" Like, I don't remember saying that. But when my sister was playing soccer in middle school, so I would have been in elementary school, I would be like running along the sideline with a buddy of mine, and his dad and I would kind of kick a football back and forth with his son, and we'd play a little bit, and we'd always try to do these trick catches, right? Throw it over the shoulder, catch it one
Mm-hmm.
hand, all this kind of stuff. And again, we were young, right? This guy's just free babysitting. And I remember he said to me one time, and again, I'll never forget it, man. I don't know why it stuck so hard, but he said, "It doesn't matter if you make the play; it's how you look when you're doing it." Right? So this is something that I've said over and over again. I remember I said it in high school, in the high school newspaper. I said it one time when I being interviewed in college. I've said it multiple times playing as a professional athlete. Now I've kind of changed my thoughts. It does matter if you make the play, right? It's like, like if you got a business pitch and you blow the pitch,
Yeah.
but you look good, it's like, maybe that it wasn't as optimal as possible. But I do think looking good, feeling good is such a huge part of it. And kind of earlier in the week when you brought up the idea of this conversation, I started like meditating on some of these thoughts, and a big thing that came up in my mind was when I wasn't as confident as an individual and I wasn't as competent in the skill set that I was trying to express, whether it be, business or whether it be as a trainer or whether it be as an athlete, I used kind of comfort or swagger or style as a mask
Mm-hmm.
to almost make myself convince myself to feel better about the information I was delivering. It's kind of like that fake it till you make it idea, but I never went over the top. You see some kids
Mm-hmm.
now on TikTok and on Twitter that are just over the top swag, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that almost takes away from what you're trying to get accomplished. But I wasn't confident as a football player, but as soon as I put a visor on, I felt a little better.
Yeah,
Right? I
I
put
could see
some
that.
elbow bands on, felt a little better. Put a towel on, felt a little better. And I used that as leverage until I got extremely competent and extremely confident in the skill set I was able to deliver. Now I pair both the things, and I almost feel like in a situation where I'm really in my wheelhouse, where I'm presenting, let's say, on topics like sports performance, or like talking to nutrition, or talking to 60 athletes on a college football team. I'm so confident in not only what I'm saying, but also just like you're saying, I feel good with what I'm wearing. I feel confident, and a lot of that comes from also the hard work that you do behind the scenes in the gym and nutrition wise and focusing on sleep and recovery and things like that. So your body looks good and then clothes fit better. And that just makes things much easier when you go to express things that you're very passionate about. I think that's a huge thing that if people can leverage, that could be a super, super beneficial for them. And again, it's your favorite tie, right? Or shirt that just like fits perfectly, right? Or even if, if I'm fortunate enough to be able to wear sweatpants and sweatshirts at work all day, right? But even when, there's a big event, I just buy a cheap white shirt from Kohl's, button up shirt, and then take it to a tailor, spend $100 getting it tailored to fit me perfectly, right? And then you go out and wear this button up shirt and just feel like $1,000,000,
That's a
right?
great idea. I'm going to steal
And it
that.
doesn't take a lot, it's like you can spend $500 on a custom shirt, or you spend $50 on a white Kohl's button up. You go to a good tailor, you get it tailored for 90 to $100, and it fits you like it's painted on, and then the self confidence just rises because of that. So I think that's such a huge piece that you've really nailed.
I think that's a huge tip just right there.
I
If
hope
you if
so.
you want to if you want to save some money but still look great, find yourself a tailor and get a shirt from Kohl's as opposed to spending that $500 like you said.
Right.
And I think that I love that you brought up the fake it till you make it because I've had arguments with one specific friend of mine that is not the way he wants to live his life, and I'm like, I don't know, man. I think I don't know if this is 100% fact, but I feel like there's been studies done that if you do like tell yourself that you're in a positive mood and you kind of like pretend, it starts to become your reality just because of like the wiring in our brains. I don't know if this is a fact, but I'm just saying again, when it comes to it works for me, it works for me. I always, that's one of the things that I've always talked to any of the teams that I've led when it comes to professional work and things that I do is I'm always consistent. You're going to get the same person
Yeah.
day in and day out. If stuff outside of work is going crazy, life sucks like outside of work, you're still going to get the same person as you'd get if outside of work everything's going beautifully, I'm having a great time. You're going to get kind of that same person because I feel like I'm always going to like at least make it okay for the teams that report to me that they feel comfortable and safe and trust that they can bring anything to me and they're not going to have any negative aspects. Obviously there's coaching and there's pushing people to perform better, and that's not always the most positive, but there's a positive intent to it. So yeah, I think again, just to describe what made me think of this as a tip was Like my favorite outfit, I have a pair of khakis that fit really well, a Nike polo that's like a dark blue that fits really well, and I've got a pair of like kind of dress slash casual kind of sneaker type shoes. And I'm telling you, that's my Monday outfit 9 times out of 10. I just love it. Like, it just, the shirt fits well, the pants fit great, the shoes fit great, they're comfortable. I know I'm going to be walking around, I'm going to be talking to people, and that was what made me think of this tip off the top of my head, because like I said, I love starting my weeks with that. So it works for me, and maybe this tip might work for anybody listening. Find something that you like, that you feel like you look good in, but also do all the back end work that Colin talked about with training, exercise, diet, because you're not wrong, Colin. Like I actually lost myself there for a few years when it came to like physical like training and stuff like that, where I've always like worked out. I've always trained kind of since high school sports, but there was like a big period of about 5 to 6 years where it was very off and on. Like I'd go for like a couple days here, take 3 days off, go a couple days here, 1 day here, maybe even a month off, like just because I was being lazy or work was busy or I felt like I had something going on. And the last 3 years, I kind of dove headfirst into it, and it's almost like training and just getting in better shape and having my kids, pursuing the things that I've been pursuing. I feel that confidence even more, and picking my favorite outfit's a lot easier when it fits well and it looks good when I'm wearing it. So yeah, I think that's another thing that we'll save for another episode, because I do have that as one of my things that I do that works for me when it comes to fitness. I do that, and this will be a little bit of a preview. One of the things that I always say is like, I want to do something difficult like the first thing in the morning. So that's why I try to train in the morning as much as I can, because I feel like that gets my mindset in a direction of like, anything after this isn't going to be as hard as what I just did this morning. So we'll dive into that in another episode. But I want to switch gears and ask you, Colin, kind of any tips that you have that you can share with listeners, and that are things that work for you and that might work for somebody else.
Yeah, man. Of course, I've got a couple big rocks that I'll talk about. I do want to say one more thing, because I just looked at my notes and I had written this down too. You talk about finding one outfit, something that fits really well, something you feel super comfortable in. One, I think I like that you do it on Monday, because a lot of times we're not thinking as hard, we're not challenging our brain as much on the weekend, right? And then Monday comes along, you're kind of not wasting that mental bandwidth of thinking, what am I going to put on? What combo am I going to put together? You say, I know this on Monday is what I'm going to put on, and you're not wasting that brain energy that you would trying to come up with a new outfit, right? That every single Monday or whatever that is. So to that point, what I've done also is, and my wife makes fun of me about this, I have one style of shirt that I bought a couple years ago. It's a little tighter up top, a little tighter on the shoulders,
Mm-hmm.
then it gets loose and kind of like longer on the back. I bought one of them. I put it on. I liked how it fit, and then I went to the store and I bought every single color of that same exact shirt.
I
Right, so
love
I
it.
know if I'm going out, let's say we're going to I don't know, to a bar happy hour in the summer, I'm either wearing a color of this shirt, shorts and high tops, or I'm wearing a throwback jersey, shorts and high tops. Because
I
I
love it.
know these two things fit me really well and I feel really comfortable in them. And again, I've got tons of variation, but
Mm-hmm.
they all fit the same because it's all the same shirt, just all different colors. So
I love
that
that.
was something that I wanted to mention. So again, another hack there. So my biggest thing, man, and this has taken some growing into. This has changed over the past 10 years or so. Like when I was single and living on my own and didn't have a ton of other things to worry about, I could wake up and the first thing I could do was dedicate 20 minutes to myself, where I would keep it dark. I'd put on a meditation app and I would meditate, right? Then life gets in the way, right? You're waking up a little later, you don't have 20 minutes to dedicate to that. I think it's amazing if somebody can spend that time and thought, but I also know it's not super easy for everybody. Right now there's no way I'm going to say to my wife, hey, will you go take care of our girl? I'm going to need 20 minutes. I'm going to need to red light. You know what I mean? I'm going to need to focus. I'm going to need to write my intentions. I'm going to need to do my 5 minute journal. So I don't do any of that. But the first thing I do now is I wake up and I basically like bathe myself in gratitude. I think about the fact that I'm waking up and there are people on this planet who don't get the opportunity to wake up. And that totally sets my day up positively. So even if the worst thing possibly happen in my mind. What, something goes wrong in business, some
Mm-hmm.
athlete gets upset, parents are upset about some of the training. We don't make as much money, any of that kind of stupid stuff that happens. If I can ground myself in gratitude first thing in the morning, then I know that I'm in a better place than a lot of people are. So
Mm-hmm.
I try to spend that first, it honestly, I wish I could even say a minute, but it's like 10 seconds where I wake up, where I look to my right, and I've got the woman who I love the most on the planet laying there, and she's asleep, and she's beautiful, and I'm in this house, right, that we paid for, that's air conditioning or that has heat, right? And I've got this dog who is like my soul, right, who's downstairs asleep, and things are really good, right? And I try to remind myself that in that first 10 seconds, because anything else from there makes decision making much easier. I had a time in my career where, and this will kind of make sense, but I had a time where all of my efforts, all of my intentionality, all of my training, all of my skill practice, all of my film study was grounded in anger.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I think it's what I needed. There was an individual who I worked with in college who I believe didn't give me the opportunity that I should have been given when I was in Indiana. So I left Indiana, didn't have a big opportunity to go and play in the NFL because, in my mind, it was this individual's fault. So when I started playing arena football, it was everything I was doing was to spite this individual. And I've said his name so many times on different podcasts and different conversations that like I don't even want to wear it out anymore
Yeah,
because
we don't have to dive into
I
that.
don't
We don't
think
got to give him any pub.
right. I don't think he deserves that energy. But what ended up happening is I had a pretty successful professional career. I scored over 100 touchdowns. I think like 160 touchdowns or something in my career. And I remember when I scored that 100th touchdown, I had that football and I thought, I'm going to send it to this guy because he's the reason that I'm here. I'm telling you, every time I was in the gym, I was thinking about this guy. And every time I was on the field, I was thinking about this guy. And I was so angry all the time. And it didn't really affect me with my family. It didn't affect me in my relationships. It wasn't like that. But there was just a negative energy that I carried around all the time. I scored that 100th touchdown and I was going to send him the football and basically say, told you so. Right. And then I thought, what happens when this guy gets this ball in the mail? And he's like, I haven't thought about this dude in 5, 6 years. And all he's doing is giving me his energy, right? Giving me the power over him. I wasn't going to let him have that. So that was a huge moment for me that I thought, you know what? Forget this guy, right? It got me to where I'm going, but it's not going to get me to the next level. It's not going to ultimately make me the human being who I know that I am, who needs to be grounded in gratitude, who needs to be loving, who needs to be caring, who wants to be a father, who wants to be a husband, who wants to be a good son, wants to be a good brother, wants to be a good friend. None of that, I couldn't have achieved any of that if I was constantly hating this guy.
Right.
So that was such a big moment for me. And finally, when I like let that go, I said, you know what? Mindset changed. Everything's about my family. Everything's about the people I love. Everything is about inspiring people who want to get to the place that I am and showing them that if they work hard enough and they care enough that they can ultimately get there. So that was kind of a long story to come back to. That first 10 seconds of gratitude is so important to me. And again, it's amazing if you can get up and you can cold plunge and you can sauna and you can 5 minute journal and you can write down in your intentions. But I spend 10 seconds, and I think that has such a massive impact on everything else I do throughout the day.
That's actually fantastic. And that's, again, I'm writing it down because I need to do that. I am such a person that I get so focused on the fact that I'm not where I want to be professionally. Like that's a big thing that I think about on a regular basis is that I'm like, I'm looking for that next opportunity. I'm networking all the time, trying to talk to these people at higher levels than me, surrounding myself with people that are higher levels than me because of the fact that, the people you surround yourself elevates you as well. And so it's great to think about that. I need to take that 10 seconds when I wake up and just think about all the things I'm thankful for. Don't just start to immediately go to my phone to check my email, what I might have gotten overnight, that kind of thing. I think taking that first 10 seconds to do that is something that I'm going to start doing. And I hope some of the people listening are going to start doing as well. Cause I think that's a very important thing because we do have to kind of ground ourselves into our reality. And, a lot of us, despite being sad, despite being lonely, despite being anxious, there are things that you could probably be grateful for when you wake up in the morning and think about, hey, I just got the chance to wake up and take today on and see what I can make of it. So that's a fantastic outlook, and I like that a lot. Now, when you talk about journaling and stuff, I actually have this right here. It's the 369 journal. I know it's a
Nice.
little bit hokey, but it's essentially from like the Tesla, the guy like that was into like frequencies and all this stuff. But the 369 method is you write down 3 times in the morning, 3 times in the after, or 6 times in the afternoon, 9 times in the evening, kind of like what you want to manifest. And so for the last like year, sometimes when I'm busy, I just do all at the same time. So I do like, I
Yeah, yeah.
think it's like 18 in a row just to knock it out in the morning. But it's one of those things I do block time every day to make sure that I at least get them all written down in the same. And I've missed some days. I've been honest on like my social media and stuff. Like there's times that, yeah, I missed a day or I miss a day on the weekend or something like that. But I think that that's something that, helps me stay focused on what I want. And I do really kind of believe that if it's kind of like that whole, I can't remember, if we had like a producer or somebody look stuff up, we could do it. But there's that whole thing of like, say you're shopping for like a black Dodge Charger, and then that's all you see on the road. I think it's kind of the same when we think about our goals, and like we constantly keep them at the forefront of our mind, is like, if you're looking for opportunities always, I think you're going to find them more than if you're not thinking about them. So that's just another thing that I'm thinking about just coming from this conversation. So
Yeah, and you tend to put your energy into that a little more, right? Because you're focusing on it multiple times throughout the day. And again, to some people it might sound hokey, it might sound a bit woo woo,
mm,
but I had a moment in my life a couple years ago that was exactly that. I was hoping for something, I was praying for something, and I mean I literally manifested it out of what I could almost say was nowhere. And once that happened, I thought, you know what, man, this is absolutely true. If you want something, you gotta not only say it and write it down and try to manifest it,
right.
but also you got to do the work, right? I
Hmm.
mean, I think that's another part that kind of people tend to leave out. You can't
Right.
just write stuff down and hope,
And it's just going to magically end
and
up in your
it's
lap.
just yeah, it's just gonna happen. But we had this moment when I wanted to get down on one knee and propose to my now wife. I was looking at rings, so I kind of started that process, and every guy who's done it knows that it's going to be more expensive than they want it to be. But the plan
Or
is to only
you
do it
even
once,
imagine. I
or you could
thought,
have ever even imagined.
I
Yeah,
thought
yeah,
that
like
it was just one ring too. And then I was violently told that, oh no, you got to get a wedding band too. And I was like, what?
yeah, 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 yeah. Well, I would have split up my finances if I knew I had to get two. But I had found one that she really liked, and I remember thinking like, there's no way I can, there's no way that I can possibly afford this. With job I was where I was going to have to figure something else out, and kind
Mm,
of going through all the hoops, trying to figure out what I was going to do, where I was going to put my money, what I was going to invest in. And I got a call from this was within the week of me finding this ring. I got a call from the company that I work with in the entertainment industry. Been doing and I think we talked about it a little bit
yeah.
on part one of the podcast, but I've been doing stunts in sports movies for about a decade, and I hadn't heard from them in about a year or so, and I had the price of this ring written down on a sheet of paper. And I remember we were sitting in our apartment. My wife obviously wasn't there. I wasn't going through all this
Hmm.
where she could see it. I got a phone call from these people. They said, "Hey, CT, we have an opportunity for you. We want you to do a couple stunts. We want you to play this role. We want you to do this, this, and this." And I said, "For sure. How much is it going to pay? Let me figure that out." And I took the money that I was going to make from the movie, and then I took out, what it was going to cost for me to fly out there, what I assumed I was going to spend in food, gym membership while I'm out there for a couple months, all this kind of stuff. It literally came down to the dollar amount, what I was going to make from filming this movie to be able to pay for this ring. It was the exact same number.
Holy cow.
Dude, I mean, I get chills
That's
even talking
that's
about
like
it.
that's just like fate right there.
Yes, I mean it was and so it's funny. So then I go to my girlfriend at the time. I said, "Hey, I have this opportunity to do this film. It's going to be a couple months that I'm going to need to be gone. I'm so sorry about that, but it's going to all be for good." And obviously that's a hard thing to do. Like leave your wife with a dog. It would be much
Hmm.
harder now, with a baby. But I kept saying like, "Trust me, this is going to pay off. Trust me, trust me, trust me." You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And finally at the end of that film, I was able to buy the wedding ring of or the engagement ring of her dreams and propose. I mean, just weeks later. And afterwards, I said, "This is why I said it was so important that I do this." It's like I would have given you a $40 ring if it weren't for this, which again, there's no problem with a $40 ring, right? But I know it's what she wanted, and I know she's still proud of it to this day. So once, something like that happens, you have an experience like that in your life, and you just can't help but believe in frequencies and energies. And I thought that was such an important moment. So now, just like you, man, if I want something, I
Yeah,
write it down, I focus
for
on it,
sure.
and I do everything I can do to chase it.
Yeah, just to give you a little bit of insight with my wife and me buying our engagement ring, I was not making very much money at the time. I think I was probably like barely over $20 an hour, maybe $25 an hour, and I went to a store, and also at the time I had. So when I was younger, I made a lot of bad decisions, getting myself into terrible credit score, all kinds of stuff like that. And so I went to the store. I thought, oh, I've been doing pretty good for the last like 3 or 4 years. I've paid a lot of things off. I should be able to like maybe put this on credit and then pay it off. But no, I got denied at the jewelry store. We had looked at rings. I knew what style she liked. I knew what she wanted. And so, but they were like, hey, we have a layaway program. And I was like, oh, what's that? And so like they explained it to me. And so literally every week for like, I can't even tell you how long. I just remember I would get off work on Friday and I would drive over there and give them some cash and just pay little bits at a time. And it took me a while, but I got it. And like what felt so good about that was, I bought something that was a few $1,000s, which again, I don't think that should be a competition on how much a ring costs, but to me, that was a lot of money. Like that was very significant. And to be able to say that like we paid it off, it's owned, like I don't have this on credit, felt really good when we actually got the chance to do it. But yeah, it was just so silly. Like I was hiding it from her for so long. I was hiding the receipts because I would always keep the receipts to see how much like I had left to pay. And so what the worst part about this whole thing though is I actually finally get it paid off, and I get it, and I take it home and I put it in like a spare room in our apartment underneath a bunch of sweatpants, like stuff that I don't ever really wear as much at the time. And I was like, oh, she'll never find it in here. She's putting laundry away, finds the box, and like she said, she immediately slammed the drawer closed. Like, so she was like, I wasn't gonna look. She was like, and then she was like, she knew that I had something in there. She wasn't 100% positive it was a engagement ring, but she knew something was in there. And so the funny thing was she's like, so I spent like the next like month or two just like wanting to go and look at it, but also not, because I wanted to be surprised by it. So,
Yeah.
so
Oh,
she
that
never,
was
so
so
she never
tough.
looked at, she never looked at it. But I ended up proposing to her like a little bit later after that. But all right, so we've had a really good conversation, but I want you to kind of give anybody that's listening, places that they can find you if they're an athlete and they want to train, if they have a podcast that they want to listen to, anything that you're doing. This is your time to kind of share that with anybody listening to see if they can kind of do some cross pollination with listeners and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you saying that. So we are located, our training facility, we're located in the Cleveland area. So we have two facilities. One's on the west side of Cleveland, one's on the east side of Cleveland. So if you're ever in the area, hit us up and come on by. The one I currently run is called T3 Performance in Beechwood. So we're in Beechwood, Ohio, just east of the city. The podcast that I co-host is called Cutoffs and Coffee. And it sounds exactly like the name says. It's just a couple of bros. It's myself and my best friend, another training director at our West Side location, and we started the podcast to talk to people in the fitness industry, people in the strength and conditioning industry, where we just drank a lot of coffee, had cutoffs on, and talked about the best training splits and how to improve leg strength and vertical jump and all that kind of stuff. And it's been fun because over the last couple of years, it's almost made its way towards where we're just talking to high performers, people who are really incredible at what they do. And we do, Justin, just like you're talking about, just like pick their brain and try to take one or two things that we can start doing in our daily lives today to help us become better human beings and better performers. So, it started strength and conditioning, but we've since talked to really high level dog trainer. We talked
Oh,
to
wow.
a DJ and a musician pretty recently. I've talked to a couple actors and performers and just people who are just really really elite in their niche, because we try to figure out what kind of what makes them tick. My personal social media is the real CT. I'm just like it sounds, like the real CT, and that's where I do a lot of my training stuff. I joke, I call it a dog page,
Hmm.
kind of cosplaying as a training page because I love my dog man so much, and he's always around the gym when I'm training at the home gym, and so you'll see pictures and videos of him. But what I'm trying to do is just basically motivate, like we talked about, people our age, man, who were high school athletes, were college athletes, and then just think, oh, now I'm 40, I can't train like that, right? If you're smart and you do it the right way, and you progressively overload and you rest enough. I mean, there are ways to continue to gain strength, continue to change your body, continue to have really nice physical transformations, as well as strength gains, performance gains, all that kind of stuff into our 40s. And I continue putting that stuff out. Like you mentioned, the ebook, which was I appreciate you bringing up. I spent a lot of time on that kind of during maternity leave. I think if somebody gets the ebook, it's totally free. You can find it again on my Instagram page. It basically talks you through, no matter what style of training you're in, how you can build the perfect kind of dream home gym for what you want to do and your goals. And then I also provide some free programming on there just so you can see the type of programming I do. And then from there, I also work one-on-one online with people, doing online programming. Have a couple programs out, plan on launching about 4 or 5 more online programs this kind of year in 2025. And then I'm always at the gym, man, at T3 Performance in Beechwood, and we just want to help not only athletes become the best athletes they can, but my big focus now, again at 38, I realize there are I want different things out of training and out of life than I wanted when I was 22, when I was 18. And my big goal is to be able to help individuals gain confidence through strength, through the weight room, so they can ultimately be the best human being they can be, because we know at some point sports are going to run out. You're going to graduate from college, you're going to graduate from high school, you're not going to play sports competitively. I want individuals to still have a positive feeling about themselves and know that all the work that they've done is not just for naught, that it's actually for them to become the best people that they can possibly be. So that's kind of my message. That's what I'm always trying to preach on social media. And I just love helping people. That's why I'm in the field. I know you do too. That's why you do
Hmm.
the posts that you have on Snapchat and put your stuff up all over social media. So if you're looking for guidance on that stuff, find me, the real CT, on Instagram, and I'm more than willing to help.
That's awesome, man. And also, just for everybody listening, just to kind of recap, I think the two biggest tips that I want to share and make sure that we talked about was the 10 seconds or some taking some time in the morning right when you wake up to think of, like, show gratitude and like think about the things that you're happy about in life, and the thing, and kind of try to avoid negative thoughts. So like right when you wake up, start thinking about why you, just like at the very smallest level, or not even smallest level, but the most important level, is you got to wake up. That's like, I feel like Colin saying that was very important. Like, there's a lot of people that don't get that opportunity to wake up and take the day on. So I think that's a really big thing. And then again, what works for me is starting my Monday and knowing exactly what I'm going to wear and that I'm going to look good when I'm wearing it. And it starts my day off with confidence and starts our week going in a positive direction. So if it works for me, it might work for you. But what I would like people that are listening or watching, I don't know exactly where all this is going to get posted. I know for a fact it's going to be a podcast audio, but when it comes to video, I'm not sure where that's going yet. But if you have things that you want to share, maybe you can be featured on another podcast where I'm going to share like maybe some tips and stuff that other people might do, something quick that you might do for yourself. So you can find me at Juice 85 OR7, Juice 85 or 7. I'm not going to change that. That's been my handle forever. So whatever. This is a new podcast, but I'm not changing it. It's easy to keep, and I'm not going to mess with it. And then I may feel like this is a bad idea later on, but I'm going to give my personal email. It's jdkelly8507 @gmail.com. Send those to me too. Like if you want to reach out, or if you want to even be a guest on the podcast, that kind of thing, reach out and we'll talk about it. And like I said, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate you joining me, Colin.
Justin, man, thanks so much for having me, dude. And I almost would be remiss if I don't say one more thing. I don't get the opportunity to talk about this a lot, on our podcast, but there are things that I talk about a lot when we're in the gym and when I'm talking to individuals who are kind of struggling with their fitness or their health, and I want to make sure to be able to say it here. And like you said, you're not an emotional dude. I'm a super emotional dude. I probably cried twice already this morning, but I get it from my dad. He's emotional. I'm emotional, but I want people to understand that if you're not in the place that you're at right now and you want to be, let's say, stronger, or you want to be a better dad, or you want to be a better athlete, I want you to think about what type of things you would do if you were to embody that person, right? If you want to be strong, what type of things would a strong person do? How would you react in certain situations if you were strong, right? If you want to be optimistic, if you call yourself an optimistic person, if you ultimately would want to live a more optimistic life, think about in situations that you get into, what would somebody who's optimistic, what would they do? Right? And the hardest part is starting, but once you start, it makes decisions so much easier. Again, in fitness, it's easy to say, right? It's like just go into the gym and get started. But how many times there's crazy statistics on how many times people drive to a gym, park, and leave.
Yep, and don't even get out.
I mean, it's like 7 or 8 times, right, for people to go do that before they actually walk into the gym. But again, if you want to identify as a person who trains and a person who exercises and a person who does hard things, you've got to start doing the things that those people will do, and in no time you will become that person. So I identify as a father. I identify as a husband. I identify as somebody who cares about their fitness. So every single day, when it comes down to making decisions, I have to make the decision of somebody who is a good father. And I have to make the decision that they would make. I have to make the decision of, do I go watch Notre Dame and Ohio State at a bar, or do I sit there and lay next to my wife as she watches Grey's Anatomy and I pull it up on the phone because that's what a good husband would do, right? And so I want people to start thinking about that. I want to identify as somebody who's strong, do things that strong people do, and in no time that will be your default, and you will become the person who you are meant to become. It just takes a little bit of work and a little bit of consistency, and from there, anything is possible. I promise you that.
That's fantastic, man. And again, I'm speaking for Colin and myself. We've given you some tips that it may work for us, and possibly it'll work for you. Thank you for joining, Colin, and I look forward to continuing talking. Maybe we'll have you back on, obviously, because I think you're a great person to talk about these subjects. And again, if you are going through anything, you're sad, depressed, anxious, lonely, anything like that, hopefully these tips will help you in the future. And just kind of look for the positive. That's what I always do, and I think that that's the most important things. This has been Justin and Colin, and you guys have a fantastic evening. Thanks for listening. All right.